If a guy has to prove himself, if a woman has to prove herself, prove her value, her worth, it will destroy the marriage in one of many ways. Insecurity leads to jealousy, and jealousy leads to destruction. Now, on the flip side, don't treat your spouse as if you are better than your spouse, because you're not. You may think that you are better. You may have greater physical skills, greater intellectual abilities. You may be more handsome or more beautiful, but you are not better than your spouse. What a sin to belittle a person who is not only created in God's image, but who is also one with you. An attitude of superiority leads to physical, verbal, and emotional abuse. Wherever you find abuse in a marriage, you will find that one of the two married people feels superior to the other. And young people, I'm going to come back again to you. If you date someone who for 1 second acts as if he or she is better than you drop that person immediately. Don't let that person destroy God's image in your life. Lesson 3. Have a plan. Verses 7 and 8. Tell me, you whom I love, where you graze your flock and where you rest your sheep at midday. How many of you who are married always know where your spouse is? Okay? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Some spouses are saying, hey, I'm not going to report to my husband. I'm not going to report to my wife. What Solomon is talking about is that every married couple needs a game plan. If you're going to rendezvous in the middle of the day, you need to know where your spouse is going to be. And not knowing where your spouse is can be one of the most destructive forces in your marriage. Guys, there's nothing wrong with saying to your wife, I'm going to Lowe's. I'll be there for a couple of hours. And then you'll rush through. You'll understand why your wife takes all day at Penny's or somewhere. But where I am and what I'm doing is not just my business. It's my wife's business as well. Solomon says, why should I be like a veiled woman beside the flocks of your friends? If you do not know, most beautiful of women, follow the tracks of the sheep and graze your young goats by the tents of the shepherd. See, Solomon made his point by illustrating what has to happen. If a husband and wife are going to get together, they've got to have a game plan. One of the things that I wrote on the back of the worship guide is if a church is going to succeed, it has to have a game plan. Sunday school classes have to have a game plan if you're going to demonstrate the love that Christ has for the world. Otherwise, you'll just be teaching to the choir and never applying anything. If you're going to succeed in marriage, you've got to have a plan. And one of the most important parts of that plan is where you and your spouse will get together and set aside some time just for yourselves. I have asked couples and individuals, when do you take time for yourself? And you'd be surprised at how many couples and individuals respond. What's that? Between the children and work and everything else, there is no time for us. So in other words, folks, it won't happen unless you have a plan. You have to make it happen. And if you don't plan to be together, you're going to grow apart. And that union, which is so fragile in today's world, will break under the tension. Now, if you happen to be here this morning with your spouse, I want to ask you to just take your spouse's hand right now. Now, I'm not going to put you on the spot. I'm not going to ask you to stand or anything. I'm going to ask you to pray. I want you to pray that God will help the two of you apply today's lesson on love, marriage, and intimacy. Give God thanks for that person who is beside you. Commit yourself to living on an equal standing, to being devoted to that person. And if you're single but in a relationship, do the same thing. Or if you're here this morning and perhaps your spouse has gone to be with the Lord, or you might be divorced. Perhaps you have a child who is married, or you have a neighbor. And would you just pray for that couple right now? May we pray.